5 of sustaining and building your real estate investing business in a crisis. And we will just be just a couple of seconds as Paul gets going, because you know what, we have all this technical stuff going on. You guys don't see it. It's, you know, about the swan that glides slowly across the top of the water, and underneath we're all going like this. So here we go. So our sponsors. So really, we do have to give a big shout out to our sponsors. Really be sure to reach out for them, because they really, really help us. We have BDO, Elevation Realty, the Windrose Group, Blackjack Consulting or Contracting, Hub for Insurance, Mission 35 Mortgages, Carson Law, Cashflow Tribe, AKIS Home Inspections, Legal Second Suites, Artex, Pinnacle Wealth, and Second Mortgages, Private Mortgages from Susan Flanagan. So please reach out to them. We really believe in our sponsors. They're great people. And now I'm going to get to the disclaimer. The Right Club does not endorse any particular attendee, participant, speaker, investment, sponsor, advertisement, or anything else presented during meetings, events, on our website or social media platforms. The Right Club also does not guarantee the accuracy of any information presented during our events or on the Right Club website and social media platforms. Before taking action, always do your own research, including but not limited to talking to other people about their experiences, your legal and accounting teams, and then make your decision. So with that, Sarah?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm really excited. This is our 5th episode that we're doing, our 5th webinar. So thank you for those that have come back over and over, and welcome to those who it's your first time. Super excited. So we are doing these webinars. It's on sustaining and building your real estate investing business during a crisis. It's a series. And today we have landlord advocacy groups. We've got 3 amazing women that have been doing some great things for us landlords. I'm Sarah Larby. I'm here with Laurel Simmons. The other 2 founders are Alfonso Salemi and Daniel St. Jean. And we take turns rotating and going through the webinars. So super excited. We're going to keep continuing to provide some really great information for you guys. It is about community. It's about helping one another. And today's going to be a topic just on that as well. So we're going to be bringing you some experts on the topic, and some of you guys may already know a few of these ladies here. So Laurel, do you want to talk about the housekeeping?
Yes, I will. So just a couple of housekeeping notes. Down at the bottom of your monitor, you'll see a chat. If you'd like to ask questions of our panelists, put Q in the box, and then if there's a specific panelist that you'd like to address your question to, put the name. We'll do our best to get your questions answered. We do have a lot of questions ready for them, so probably a lot of them will be already answered, and we can't promise to answer every question because we'd be here till tomorrow night if we did that. That's just how it goes. But we'll do our best, and we'll get through as many possible questions as we can.
Absolutely. So who are the wonderful ladies?
So I'm going to start from east to west. So we have Stella Vanderloot from Landlords, Nova Scotia.
Go back up.
And Stella is is with us with audio but not video today. As you all know, there have been some really terrible events that have occurred in Nova Scotia, and Stella has been affected personally and professionally, and we really thank you, Stella, for being here. We totally understand why you don't want to be in video, and just wanted to let you know from me, from all of us at the Right Club, that our hearts and our prayers and our thoughts go out to you.
Thank you, Laura.
A difficult time for everyone, because we're all one community in this country. It doesn't matter whether anything wrong happens, we're one community.
Thank you.
Stella is the president and founder of VDL Property Management Limited. She's been for 16 years. She immigrated from the Netherlands, and she's proudly earned an A+ rating with Better Business Bureau every year. I actually met Stella about whoa, geez, 7, 8, 9 years ago in Nova
Yep.
Scotia. It was really cool. VDL has over 200 rental properties owned by private investors, and she has currently 5 properties herself with investors, and she's a registered relocation specialist, and she is the largest property management company in Nova Scotia. And she is working to create, raise awareness of landlord advocacy in Nova Scotia. Now, moving farther west, Kayla Andrade from Ontario Landlords Watch in Ontario. Kayla is the founder of Ontario Landlords Watch, and which is a grassroots advocacy organization for landlords. She's been a real estate investor. She had her first rental property at the age of 18. And so she's a seasoned landlord and owns multifamily and single family rentals. So thank you, Kayla. And we're really looking forward to hearing your words of wisdom. And on to Alberta, where we have Donna Monkhouse, who is with the Alberta Residential Landlord Association. And you're in Edmonton, correct,
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
She has a certified property management degree. She's been in property management in the industry for over 35 years, managed multifamily residential for both assets and owner managers, and is experienced with new condominium developments and commercial strip malls. She's been 7 years as the director of property management in the public sector, has 20 years on the board of directors for the Alberta Residential Landlords Association, and as of 2019 became the executive director for the Alberta Residential Landlord Association. So thank you, Donna, and welcome. So we have an absolute wealth of knowledge and experience and wonderful wisdom to be shared. So with that, Sarah, I'm handing it
Sure,
back.
absolutely. Welcome, ladies. I'm super excited to hear all the insights today. So first question we're curious about, what are some of the issues that landlords are facing in each of your provinces? Donna, why don't we start with you?
Oh, so in Alberta, we've been lucky enough to have built a quite a good relationship with our government. So we get to be involved a little bit more, which is helpful. But our issues are probably very much like I'm seeing here. We have the landlord's expenses are increasing daily, which is not a bad thing. In some cases, they're giving their staff raises, their frontline staff, to be thankful for their frontline staff. We're seeing tenants. Not so much April, where they didn't pay their rent. We did a survey out with 80% paid in full, 13% made payment arrangements, and 7% just said we're not paying at all. We saw some graffiti on our buildings. We saw rent strikes come out, and I'm pretty sure that was across the province or across Canada with that kind of stuff. And so we're more concerned with May as well. The government programs are out there. We're trying to speak to our government about some kind of a rent relief or a rent bank. And if BC's on the phone, I know BC has one currently. I don't know how it's being used, but that's what we need here right now. We need some more help for the tenants and the landlords, payable to the landlords. So that's what we're asking for. That's what we need. We need to cover some of our costs. We saw a lot of people move out. We saw a lot of vacancies be incurred when they announced the state of emergency. What happened was people automatically, they were getting laid off like crazy. A lot of them just moved out. They just left. So our vacancies have climbed to the roof.
Yeah, absolutely. Some similar concerns, I think, for many provinces. Kayla, what are your thoughts on that?
Same thing. We got the mass movement of tenants who are trying to, pull the rent strike situation. We have relief coming from the government for commercial renters. We're now in the midst of speaking with the elected officials to say, where is the rent relief for the rent subsidy for the residential properties? But again, that's got to go through from federal funding, provincial funding. And I do know that the federal, provincial, and municipal governments are all speaking to figure out, how they're going to approach this. And I think that's why April 1st, they did the survey. A lot of people done a survey to see how many people have paid, to see where they should be stepping in and when. Because again, if you come out with a program, more people are not going to want to try to make their payments when they can have that type of rent subsidy. But again, this is the growing movement of having the landlord and tenant board shut down, not listening to any type of evictions, also not able to enforce the type of evictions. But rumor is now going around that the landlord and tenant board could be closed until September. So if this is the case, we could see a lot more hardship coming to the mom and pop operations. And where are they going to get out of it? Are their business going to sustain this type of COVID-19 effect to it? Or, are they going to start taking matters into their own hands? So we're really trying to do exactly what Alberta is doing, getting the rent subsidy for residential properties. And that's going to be the best thing to keep our housing structure, our housing supply strong for now and for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you recently had, before all of this, a tenant that was not paying, and the paperwork, how to do it, and it already took you 7 months just because of the delayed process and just Ontario in general. Now, I'm actually a little bit worried because I'm a lot worried. Once all of this, unfortunately reopens again, the backlog, it's not going to be uncommon for somebody to have to wait 12 months, 18 months. Like, that's what I'm most scared of. What are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely going to, if you're looking at the fact that the landlord and tenant board is not going to open up until September, and that gives you from March, well, maybe for the people in March, but April, May, June, July, August, September, that's 6 months before they open, which could be another 7 months before you get in front of an adjudicator. And then once you get in front of an adjudicator, now there could be a payment plan pushed on to cover those 6 months of missed rent. And this is where we're going to see it. The landlord and tenant board needs to be reformed. There's no way that they're going to be able to handle the type of volume that's going to be coming to them. And that's why if you look at the type of relief that they're currently suggesting that is out there based on for renters, as evictions are on hold, and also there's going to be more funding to Ontario Works to help people to get bailed out from those arrears. But again, those programs are very different in each region that you're looking at, and again, they have held their funds on issuing the rent arrears the way that it currently was, because we always had this type of rent bank rent subsidy. Now they've held those funds because they know everything is on the downfall. And what landlords need to continue to keep doing, and we'll answer the question here for one of your attendees, it's about keep issuing that N4 notice. And it's just because that N4 notice could be something that could be used for them to when they need to gain the type of funds, to get access to the type of funds, they might need that N4 notice. But again, we're really trying to advocate for an N4 notice that both landlord and tenant sign to agree that that is the amount that is due, but have the landlord apply for the type of assistance. So that way we know that it's getting to the shelters, the landlord, and keeping shelter over their heads.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's all the rent strike, the people, unfortunately, that can pay, but don't. And then there's the other set of tenants, right, that they just can't pay. But at least the N4 for hopefully the ones that are willing to participate, if that goes through, Kayla, with your hard work and dedication, it's something at least that we can cover all the costs, because there are still costs. Stella, what are your thoughts on that for your market, Nova Scotia, Eastern Canada? Like, what are some of the issues that you're facing, and are you seeing some of the same things going on?
Actually, I'm surprised to hear that tenants are leaving units vacant in Alberta and Ontario. We have the lowest vacancy rate at the moment in the country, which is only 1%, which means if we do have a house available, there are 60 to 100 applicants. So there's an enormous need for housing here. What happens here is that because our government in the beginning of this crisis made a statement, totally unexpected for most landlords, saying that tenants who have lost their jobs and are unable to pay rent don't have to worry about it because they won't be able to be evicted for 3 months, which immediately, and I heard that from Donna and Kayla as well, which immediately caused grassroots moments to spring up, telling tenants not to pay rent or to support tenants that cannot pay rent. So that, of course, is the same as in all the other provinces. What are we going to do? Because tenants are getting financial help from the government, but for example, mortgage deferrals here do not qualify for landlords. It's only homeowners, but not rental properties.
Right.
So which brings us in a very
absolutely not everybody can qualify for those. Mm-hmm.
Correct. If you are a landlord, you cannot qualify, period.
So I want to go back to a couple things that, were said prior, some of the things that you can do while this is all happening. So, and there was a question about the N4. So while this is all happening, what in our regions can we do as landlords if somebody is not paying us rent? Let's start with Kayla on this one.
So when they're not paying you rent, it's really about issuing the proper notices that we were told to give before the pandemic, because no one's given anyone type of direction on what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. So still follow the protocol. I wouldn't be issuing an N4 notice every single month, but informing the tenants that every single month, giving them an update that this is now the new amount, so that they can have an understanding of what the amount's going to be as you file to the Landlord and Tenant Board when they actually open up. But I don't see there it being any different from giving the N4. You might look like the nasty one out there giving these type of N4s through this type of pandemic, but the best way is handling it and said that they might need this in this form for when the type of relief and different type of programs that have been already in place could come into need for them. So just keep giving them as because you'll know though, like you can tell which ones are really trying to work with you and which ones are not trying to work with you, and just keep every diary. It's also giving a nice document to them explaining about COVID-19 and saying that you're willing to work out a payment plan with them. So this way you're showing, you're building a case. So when you do have to go to the Landlord and Tenant Board, you're able to show that you've been trying to work with that tenant and get a payment plan in place. So if you are going back there and going to the Landlord and Tenant Board, now you can show the adjudicator, I've been willing to work a payment plan with them. They've been receiving benefits, or they may be still working. But again, it's still on the hold where we can't apply to the Landlord and Tenant Board underneath the L1. So this is the problem that we're seeing, because anything that deals with an eviction, the Landlord and Tenant Board is saying that they're not accepting those type of applications. They might allow you to still do it on the website and they'll still take your money for it. But again, that could, I would say it could get lost through the type of volume that's being put through the Landlord and Tenant Board in Ontario.
Kayla, your N4, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
Your N4, is that a notice to quit?
Non-payment of rent.
Okay, because we have all different terminology.
Yeah,
So
I love your way of doing things.
Yeah, so essentially you would issue
Okay.
the N4, and then you would then issue the L1, and then you would go online and you can file the L1. But I guess, Kayla, what you're saying is like for documenting purposes to keep doing the N4s and coming up with a way for that to be documented and like signed or agreed upon by you and the tenant as an option of saying, here, is all of the paperwork or the trails when you go to the board in 6 months, 9 months from now, et cetera. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you're showing your N4, you're giving one. So if someone is late on April, you're giving them an N4 notice. You're not going to give them another one for May if they're going to be late for May. You're going to give them one, because every time you keep giving that N4 notice, it's going to reset itself. The overall of signing for landlord and tenant, that is the solution that we're trying to give the elected officials in a way to make sure that the funds are going directly to the landlords and that tenants are not applying for the type of rent subsidy, but still following suit with the rent strike. So that was something of like an idea, a solution that we're really trying to push forth. And it comes down to the same thing like Ontario Works and Ontario Disability. You know, people are able to have their rent money directed to the landlord, but the tenant can also redirect it back to them. And that's what's happening as well through this type of strike movement, is that they're redirecting their social assistance back to themselves based on the fact that they don't know what is potentially happening. And even speaking to some people from the ministry's office is that I guess they're just staff workers, but they suggested that the money should be automatically directed to the landlord no matter what. And it's going to be up to the landlord and the tenant to have that mutual agreement to cease that money from coming to them in the future. But overall is that we really need the landlords to have access to that subsidy that we really want to have for the residential landlords. And the way to do that is to have that N4 modified in a way that both parties are agreeing that is the amounts that's owing for that time period, where the landlords are going to be able to have that money to them.
I'll jump in right now. There was a question that actually came in earlier, and I think it's really pertinent to what the discussion right now. So maybe Donna and Stella, you can both answer this. Maybe you can start, Donna, and then Stella, you can answer. So in terms of the process for landlords, because I mean, I'm in Ontario, so I don't know. First of all, do you have a landlord tenant board or something similar? And B, is the process, what kind of process is there to deal with landlords who are having trouble with tenants? There is something, albeit it's broken in Ontario, but there is something. Yeah. So what about where you are in Alberta, and Stella, you in Nova Scotia? So Donna, let's start with you.
Well, after listening to Kayla, I'm feeling pretty lucky to be in Alberta. Let me tell you that. I'm sorry, Kayla. I'm with you on this one. We actually have the Residential Tenancy Dispute Resolution Services here, and they do our hearings. So our government put in place a stay on evictions until May 1st. So we cannot enforce the eviction until May 1st, but we are still being heard. There are hearings still in place. Landlords have to show reasonable attempts to work with the tenants on a payment arrangement. So communicate, document is what we've been pushing out there with the tenants. And if they flat out refused, some of our landlords have already gone to court and already have orders in hand for May 1st that they'll be able to enforce come May 1st. So we issue a 14-day notice to vacate, or for non-payment of rent, we just proceed right to application to the Residential Tenancy Dispute Board. It's they work very well for us. Our Landlord Tenant Advisory Board here is a very small piece. They just give information and sell forms. So very different entity here in Alberta, but we actually cannot do late fees. We can't charge late fees. We can't do increases. We have to continue the reasonable payment plan until the stay of emergency is ended. And it was pretty much okay. I feel for Ontario right now. If I can help you in any way, call me. I'll be there.
I sent you a friend request, Donna. I sent you a friend request.
Good, I'm there. I'll be your friend request. Join our Facebook group. We have a Facebook group in Alberta, so we do that.
As you can see, some provinces are more, kind of balanced out in terms of landlord tenants. Some are in one direction, aka, favoring the tenant. Stella, what about you on your end there?
We have the Residential Tenancy Board in Nova Scotia. And it's, pretty much in favor for one direction. It's very hard for landlords to basically rob the poor tenants from their hard-earned house, even if they don't pay any money. But there's ways around the law. And the last couple of years, I personally, with my business, became very creative. And that really helps. So one of the things that we do to try to get tenants to pay is I have an agreement with most of my landlords that if the tenant pays on time every month, they will get a bonus at the end of their tenancy. And it could be about $100 or $200, depending on what the landlord wants to promise. But that is something that really works. Another thing that we do is try, just like Donna said, and like Kayla said as well, document everything, try to get an open communication with your tenants, try to inform them of the situation your landlord is in, because unfortunately here in Nova Scotia, a lot of people are under the assumption that, oh, you're a landlord, that means you have 2 houses, that means you're rich, and therefore you can wait for your rent. So a part of it is education. Educate your tenants, tell them about mortgage expectations for the landlords, that it's actually that they're doing you a favor letting them live in your house, and it's not all about making money.
Absolutely. So you ladies have a lot of experience, advocating for us landlords and really, going after some of the changes that you would like to implement to make things easier now, but also in the future. What are some of the changes that we really need to bond together as landlords in each of these provinces or even Canada-wide, and ask our governments for? Stella, why don't we start with you? What are some things that you're advocating for landlords out in your direction?
I would really like to have landlords a little bit more clout. So right now we don't have it. We have to either take matters in our own hands or go through the residential tenancy board, which is a very lengthy process. Not as long as in Ontario, but it's still a very lengthy process. The steps you have to go through to either get your money from missed rent payments or damages are too long and too costly. You have to do all kinds of things as a landlord that you never dreamt you would do. You have to go first to the tenancy board, have a hearing, then the tenancy officer says, yeah, you're right, okay, you're allowed to have your money. Then you have to go and make it an order of small claims court. Small claims court sends it to the sheriff's department, but the sheriff's department wants to be paid, of course, cost you about $143. Then you have to supply the sheriff with bank accounts of the tenants, otherwise they can't really collect things, employment situations, and when you have all that, then you have to go to the registry of deeds to record your debt. And that costs you about $170. So you're not only out your rent, you're also out a lot of money to pay to these government institutions to try to get your money. And that is a discouraging step for a lot of landlords. So I would like to see personally that we are able to report this kind of debt to credit bureaus, because that would help tremendously. But that's just an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody that's out east, like where can they go to join your group and your club?
We have a Facebook page set up and it's called Landlords Nova Scotia. That is basically becoming a platform for people to report tenants, to tell about good tenants, mainly bad tenants, to post pictures of horrendous situations, to try to warn others. And that's mainly because, like in Ontario, by the sounds of it, the law is broken. It doesn't work. So you have to be creative, as I said before, and hoping to set up to start some sort of dialogue with the province and to get things in a better situation that is fair for tenants as well as landlords, because some landlords are pretty bad too, as you all know.
Absolutely. There's good and bad on both sides, for sure. Kayla, what about you?
What we would like to see changed?
Yeah, so what are some of the things that you're advocating for now and also for the future that you'd like to see changed?
So through the pandemic, it's going to be the rent subsidy. After the fact, we really need to hammer home the way that the landlord and tenant board is. Our idea that we want to kind of give to the elected officials is creating a brick and mortar place similar to Service Ontario. It will be Housing Services Ontario, and this will be one institution for every 2 cities so that people can get their help, both landlords and tenants, through any type of questions or concerns or information that they need on forms. This way, this place could also handle mediation. It could handle the hearing dates. It can also help a tenant either A, get on a list for government housing, or it can help them apply for subsidy. It's really going to be more of a place that really is going to capture all of the needs for housing into one facility where someone has someone to go to and it's not just a phone line. But we really need to hammer the fact that damages, we always complain that we need damage deposits. And in reality, we may not need the damage deposits if we can actually have our tenants held accountable through being charged through vandalism or some type of mischief charges. And that's going to be beyond the wear and tear portion. Beyond wear and tear, you're a landlord, we have to deal with it. We also want to be able to analyze the rent increases. Every property is different. Our utilities are increasing in many different municipalities. We need to be able to recoup those costs. And I think if they just allowed proper rent increases, we would see a lot less N12 and N13 notices. And N12s are for taking over the unit for their own personal use, or the N13 is for evicting a tenant for the purpose of renovations. And we would really like a late fee. Landlords, we're probably the only business out there that we can't charge a late fee. So charging a late fee for tenants who are not paying their rent on time could really help with the way that landlords are being treated. But in overall, there's 80,000 applications being brought to the Landlord and Tenant Board in Ontario, and 58,423 of them are for non-payment of rent. So really, do we need our landlord, or do we need our adjudicators listening to these type of cases, or can this be handled through a mandatory mediation and being able to give the tenants access to different government funds that are out there to help them so that they're not bogging down the Landlord and Tenant Board system, where they need to have those spots open for such slumlord situations, but getting the tenants access to funds to keep them in their homes, because it's cheaper to keep them in their homes than have them on the street and in the system. So we have 20 issues. We have to pick 5 because obviously we got to keep their attention very short and simple. But I really would like to see this Housing Service Ontario being established as the new Landlord and Tenant Board, and also mediation, and we'll see how far we can go with it. But we just got to look at their budget, know what their current budget is for housing, and seeing if we can work within that budget to create 222 of these Housing Service on Ontarios.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I think part of this is also getting together and having one voice and having a stronger voice. So where can they go if they do want to, help Kayla and help the cause and just be able to make changes? Because this is definitely not going to happen overnight.
No, definitely following us on Ontario Landlords Watch members group. Just mention that, you've been listening to us on the Right Club. We can get you into the group. Remember, it is social media. We do our best to really screen the people that we have coming in, because it is a very strong community that we've created. And we're now going to be teaching other members on how they can advocate, because even as the president or the founder of Ontario Landlords Watch, you're not going to get the type of movement that we really want to see until we teach the members to do what we do. And this way and it's sometimes you sending an email is one thing, but getting on the phone and making that phone call, that's where they can't hang up on you. They have to call you back, and it's the perfect way to show your sharing your experience and giving them your solutions. But we have to come together as Ontario and as Canada, because obviously we do have our issues all over. But I'm still jealous of Donna.
I know.
So I've been jealous ever since I looked at Alberta.
So Donna, let's talk about your area, your region. What are you finding that you're going after and really trying to
I feel bad. I feel bad for my issues, but we have issues with the RTDRS. They're slow. They're behind. Sometimes our hearings can take 2 months to get in, and by that time a tenant owes 3 months rent. We have to go through the order process as well, just like Nova Scotia does. It's not as convoluted though. Our RTDRS is they're tenant based, especially now. They're being extremely compassionate. They're forcing us to provide lots of documents. If our ducks are in a row and our documents are in place, then we're going to be okay. We asked the RTDRS to get a bigger space. and allow for more hearings to be heard. That was one of our big ones. After and during COVID right now, we really need a rent subsidy in place. We are lucky enough now, there is a rent supplement program in place, but there isn't enough money in there right now for our families here that need help. And we also need that expanded to people of the middle income groups that also need help, that are being forgotten. Because you have those people right now that have lost their jobs, that were making $80,000 a year, supporting their family, and now they can't afford their basic needs anymore because they're not making enough money. So we need that put into place. Outside of that, we also go after property taxes in Edmonton and Alberta. So we also go after that, and we're on insurance right now because property managers are getting, or landlords that are getting high increases in insurance rates at 40, some as high as 50%. So that's rising as well. But I feel bad. I don't ever want what are they called, rent? I don't even know what you call them, where you can't increase the rent. They tell you what you can do. What's that called?
Rent
control.
That's it, a rent control. If that word ever comes up, I have money in the bank to hire an advocate or a lobbyist to go after that one. Never. That one scares me. I feel sorry for you guys.
I'm going to jump in here, Stella. We have learned that you actually have a program that improves the quality of the tenants that you get. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that would help people in Ontario and out west too. Because when push comes to shove, it is about the quality of the tenants, right? And the quality of the landlords. And everybody has to work together. It's not like it's not us and them. It's we've all got to work together. But you are apparently you have something that improves the quality. Were you talking about the bonus, or was this something else?
No, that was an idea that I brought up with my landlords, trying to get the rent paid on time. We noticed that people, when they're in their housing for a number of months, not everybody, but some people are saying, oh, can I pay my rent a little late? My car's in the garage, my kid is sick, or whatever. And it started to become a little out of control. So I spoke to my landlords and basically said, can we put something in place, like some sort of a bonus, and you can work that into your rental amount because here we don't have rent control. I'm thinking we're going to get it after this crisis is over, but we don't. We have fixed term leases that we work with, and the good thing about a fixed term lease is that you don't need to give notice for rent increases. You can just basically sign a new lease agreement and say to the tenant, by the way, the rent's going to be up $50 or whatever is reasonable. And right now the rents are a bit rising out of control because, as we said, we have an enormous low vacancy rate. So that is a bit of a problem. But what we came up with is, what if we promise the tenants a bonus at the end of their lease before they sign a new one? If they pay the rent in time, every month, you'll get a deduction in the form of a gift certificate, or other landlords say, okay, I'll send an e-transfer of, let's say, $100 or $200. And that works really, really well.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see all, the differences Canada-wide and how the different boards operate. So, question for you guys, and I'm recently seeing some stuff going on Facebook, and I've got a letter as well for one of my triplexes in Hamilton, that the government is looking to put some people that need homes, and it's a government program in certain areas. Like we got a letter for Hamilton. So I don't know if you guys have been seeing these, where the government's now trying to reach out to the landlords saying, if you've got a place, we have some tenants that are like needing a place. What, have you seen it, and what is your take on something like that? Should landlords go for, some type of government tenants, or should they run fast, and why? So let's start with Donna. Have you seen it? And it's okay if you haven't. I know personally I've seen it in Ontario, so I don't know if you guys have seen it there.
In Alberta, we have housing management bodies. So we have like Capital Region Housing is in Edmonton, Calgary Housing is in Calgary, and the government subsidies and the vulnerable community and low-income residents can go there for housing. There isn't enough housing, granted. We're about 8,000 families short of housing right now in Alberta, so we need more. But they can apply there. They also offer a program that the government funds as well, which is private landlord rent supplements. So landlords can say, here, Capital Region Housing, here's one of my units, and the landlord gets full rent. So the tenant will pay what they can pay, which is usually 30% of their income, and then the rest is subsidized, which they would get as well. So the full rent goes to the landlord as well. The supplement program is a wonderful program for landlords. We also have the Housing First community here. Actually, it's the Housing First community just rented a hotel that isn't being used during COVID right now to house some of our vulnerable community that have no place to go during transition in this time. So it depends on the program, I guess. You'd have to look at every program. The PLRS program, I called it, is a good program.
Okay, and I think it probably varies a little bit by province to province. Stella, have you seen anything in the East Coast?
Well, I think I have to explain a little bit more on how particularly I work, because in the introduction, Laurel said that we were the largest management company in Nova Scotia, which is true, but it's actually only for private homes. Not for the larger housing corporations, because they're way bigger management companies than mine that deal with mainly low-income families. We don't. All we do is private homes, which brings us up in the higher market section. That's why we're not super affected by COVID-19. I heard the numbers earlier. We only had 2 tenants asking for some rent reduction due to COVID-19. Everybody else paid on time. And for May, I haven't heard anything yet. So I think we're in a little bit of a different kind of market segment than the other ladies here.
All right, so Kayla, I know that we've talked about this. I've seen a ton of back and forth with, is this a program that landlords should say yes to or run, and why?
So this program has been out way before the pandemic, and they do send it out through the mail, and they usually call landlords as well, trying to get them on this type of program. And if you had something like Alberta has, where they have a proper system and more support for the landlords, then yes, this type of subsidy, this type of support, it would probably work. But based on the fact that they're not wasting a pandemic, they really want to see if they can pull on the heartstrings and really try to get people signed up on this type of program and give them the unit. But in fact, when the Residential and Tenancy Act and the Landlord and Tenant Board is so geared towards just protecting the tenants, and we've been fighting as hard as we possibly can to get these things changed, to get landlords some rights to protect their type of investment, their retirement plan. It's more of the fact that we can't help them until they help us. But in all fairness, if you look at the recent article that we posted, is that they are now having a news broadcast of taking people from the shelter and putting them into Toronto housing. And I'm like, if you have empty units in Toronto housing, why are these people even inside of the shelter? And now the people who live in Toronto housing are having a problem with the people who are going to be moving in to this type of facility. So it's more the concept that they know they need small landlords. This is not an affordable housing crisis. They want to give us rent control, and they want to be able to put more rules and responsibilities onto landlords. But in reality, they need to loosen the restrictions. And this will allow more investors to want to invest into long-term rentals, because that's why we see a big boom of short-term rentals, because of the long-term rental rules and regulations. And we would see more people wanting to build more of a supply. It's a supply and demand issue. We've had our elected officials from federal, provincial, and municipal put in $12.7 million to create 48 units out in Kitchener, and the land was gifted to the developer from the church. So that still equals out to be $264,000 per unit to create 48 units. When in fact, if they just gave homeowners $70,000 and said, here you go. The only rule is that you have to keep it a rental unit. If you don't want it a rental unit, maybe you have to pay back a portion of that money to give back to them, but you could create 181 units with that type of money. And you can create secondary income for 181 homeowners. And then you find out that you have all these people in a shelter and you got empty units in government housing. So we got to see who's actually doing these type of policies, because they really need to pick someone that understands the industry to really make these new rules and to make these new changes that are desperately needed now and what's going to be needed for after the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. And personally, for me, the control that I have being a landlord in Ontario is screening my tenants. And so I'm not comfortable with the government doing that. And then, you know, at what point can I have the unit back if it doesn't work out because they're trashing the place, or now all of a sudden, you know, the government maybe says, okay, we're not covering the payments anymore. He's on his own. Because the rules are so much in favor, it just really worries me. And then when they leave, how am I, if there's, you know, no damage deposit, how am I supposed to get the unit turned around? So personally for me, I'm not going to give up the only little piece of control that I have being in Ontario and investing in Ontario of screening my own tenants and just making sure that I'm very, very thorough. You know, so I'm concerned about May 1st, and I don't know what your thoughts are, ladies, but you know, at the end of the day, if somebody's already not paying in April, chances are they're probably not going to be paying in May. It's going to be very hard for them to come back and be able to pay everything at some point. I can see a lot of cash for keys starting to happen. I've had a few investors, realtors call me trying to just sell their units because the tenant is going to, you know, rent strike or just not pay and run the system through, you know, the amount of months that they can stay. That's a little bit concerning. So now they're calling and they're saying, do you want the property for a discount? But there's a tenant in it that is not showing the property. They're not leaving. So cash for keys, I think, is going to be personally, and I don't know what your thoughts are, ladies, but something that a lot of investors might turn to, unfortunately, right? You don't want to give them money if they already owe you money. But if it's a matter of giving them $1,000, $5,000, $200, you know, whatever that amount is for them to leave, versus having 12 months or more of no payments and having to carry the property, it's kind of like the lesser evil. But what are your thoughts on this and for May 1st? Like, what are some of the things that you think will be happening with landlords and tenants as this goes on with the non-payment portion? So let's start with Donna.
So come May 1, I think our landlords in Alberta are a little bit worried about May and June as well. There has been enough federal funding for everybody and provincial funding for everybody that if they don't pay their rent with all the funding that is being provided, then they might need more help. So the rent relief would come into great need at that time. We feel here that we're going to see about 60% will be able to still pay in full, 40% won't. A lot of the businesses here, we've lost about 40% of the businesses in Edmonton alone have shut down. They're gone. They'll never come back. They've lost everything. So they were already hanging on, and now they're hanging worse, which their employees rent our buildings, and therefore there's no money in that. So we're hoping May and June are kind of like April. We know they won't be, but we're hoping for some reprieve on the provincial government side.
Okay. Stella, what about you?
Yeah, I second Donna on that. A lot of people in Nova Scotia, a lot of small landlords are very, very concerned, especially since our evictions are canceled until July for now. And we had, as I said earlier, tenants that are already thinking, hooray, I don't have to pay rent for 3 months. So it's getting the information to the tenants and informing them, you know, that things are going to go, even though they're on hold, if you don't pay. As landlords, please put your notice to quit in, gather evidence, because it will happen. People will be evicted come July. And the unfortunate part of this is that with our 1% vacancy rate, where are these people going to go? And I tell my tenants that, and I inform people that are on Facebook, please do whatever you can to help your landlord, because if you end up on the street, we have no place for you to go. And that message rings home. That message rings home because they are coming up with payment plans, and they're coming up with solutions, and they're saying, well, how about if you lower the rent for $50 the next 4 months, I can swing that. Then I advise my landlord, sure, you know, go for that, because it's better to have a tenant you work with that is going to be non-destructive at the end than going through this whole process again, even though you know you fill your unit really quickly because of the low vacancy rate. But where are these people going to go when you kick them out? There's no place to go.
Absolutely.
There's nothing.
And I hope as landlords and as tenants, we're going to be inspecting these as part of our screening process. Like I'm going to be asking, and you know, they don't want to share it and they don't want to send it to me, that's fine. But I'm going to be asking for bank statements that show the rent that left their accounts to their tenant for March, April, May, and June. And if this is in a year from now, I'm still going to be asking for these 4 months. Kayla, what are your thoughts on, you know, May 1st and what are some of the things that you think might be happening with landlords and tenants in the next month or two?
Well, the relief from the government is out. People are receiving their checks and their direct money pretty quickly. So the ones that can pay, they will. And I think the only thing that we need to find out is how this movement of rent strike is going, how many people are actually falling for it. But again, like you said, Sarah, it's about asking for proof that they were able to pay rent through this time frame. And that is going to be our new screening process after this. And we also have to take in consideration that even though we have this cash for keys, we try not to use it as much as we want to, because now it's just about the tenants taking advantage of the situation, extorting. And again, cash and keys may not work, especially if these people have lost their job, because now it's going to be very difficult for them to go and relocate, knowing that their job has been affected by COVID-19 and the next landlord may not accept them. So it's going to be very hard for them to get accepted for these type of places. And when you talk about different type of discounts, I'm no paralegal, so talk to your paralegal, but there's about a 2% discount that you can offer to your tenant. So you want to be very careful on what that discount is, because then it could become the lawful rent as you're trying to help them out through these type of difficult times. And this is where the fact is, where are they going to go as we have a flood of evictions that will happen? But again, the landlord and tenant board is still controlled by the government, and the government will still control how fast these people are being evicted. And they will use our private landlords as the ones who are working for the government, but with no compensation. They will stick us with these type of people, just like they're doing now with holding the evictions with no compensation. I do know that, you know, the government is taking over hotels and putting people from the shelters and people who are in need of homes into the hotels. So there's obviously money that's being exchanged there between the hotels and the government. The government from federal and provincial need to step up, and they need to have a very strong rent subsidy in place where it can't be abused. And that's the main focus that we have, because even with our $2,000 a month that people can apply for, they're giving it, but they can come back after and say, hey, you know, you didn't really need it. So you just got to make sure that we're giving them the solutions and telling them, like, this is what's going to be needed, not only for the landlords, but to protect these tenants and to make sure that they have a peace of mind knowing that they can get through this and we're all in it together.
Absolutely.
I'm going to jump in now. We're coming up to the top of the hour. We want to respect everyone's time. So we'll just do one more quick go round and tell us in a few words, is there anything else you'd like us to know before we wrap up this evening? Donna, we'll start with you.
Don't mention rent controls to Alberta people. No, don't. I just know that the landlords are communicating. You need to communicate with your tenants. You need to talk to them. You need to document. I push the word document. If you do that, I don't care what province you're in. If you communicate and you document, you'll be fine. I am the one concern I have is that you can't. You've said you can't evict in 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is. We couldn't evict in April, but we can enforce the eviction come May 1st if they have not agreed to a payment plan or agreed to certain things. So you guys don't have that, I guess, and I feel for you. I really do.
I'm coming, Donna.
I would welcome you to our association anytime.
Kayla, have you got a few last words?
Best
No.
bet is to get
Good
very
luck.
I'm going to be calling you, Donna.
Good,
The
yeah.
best thing for our listeners is that you need to get very familiar with who's in politics, from our Minister of Housing to your MPP to his assistant to all of the housing critics that are out there. Do not let them away with it. They're home. They're taking calls still. You have to voice your concerns, and don't just voice your issue with them. Give them some solutions. And if you want some talking points before you go on the phone with them, follow me on Facebook, Kayla Andrade there. I'll accept you. We'll talk about what you really need to hammer home to these people and see what we can do to put our efforts together as a community of landlords.
Thanks. And Stella, the final words are up to you.
Great. Well, my final words will be, because the the wheels are turning very slowly, as everybody knows, is get some sort of a relationship with your tenant. Don't put a tenant in and collect the rent and they don't know who you are. Get some sort of personal relationship, and also do a lot of inspections and ask them if they have any concerns. That way they feel connected and they want to pay the rent.
Thank you so very much. Sarah?
Absolutely. Ladies, thank you. I know that a lot of this is unpaid, right? I mean, you do this out of the goodness of fighting for landlords and getting justice. And like you said, there's always going to be good and there's always going to be bad of both sides. Donna, Kayla, Stella, thank you so much. And, we're going to share some of our thoughts. So I think my biggest takeaway is, we have to have one voice. One voice where, we are going after and we are fighting for really, truly what makes sense for us. And ultimately, here's the thing, we're all in this, it's hard, it's tough. Document, issue the N4, file the L1, keep documenting. There are, at some point this will pass, and then just do a very, very thorough job of enhancing the screening process. But the biggest takeaway is one voice. So let's just join these ladies and fight for, what makes sense for all landlords out there. Laura, what about you?
Yeah, for me, it's simply that don't be quiet. Don't just complain and criticize. Get involved. If you have a criticism, then come up with a solution. Because we all we need to have the issues pointed out, but that doesn't do anything. Like, what are your ideas, solutions? Because people always respond better to someone who has a solution. Whether it's a good one or not doesn't really matter. It means you care. And I guess my other big takeaway is that it's not just about the tenants versus the landlords. We have to stop thinking that way. We have to think about tenants working with landlords and
Yes.
landlords working with tenants, because we're a system. And if one part of the system is broken, then the whole system is broken. You can't have a system works when one part of it doesn't work at all. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So
Let's do our next little updates, Laurel.
Yeah, alrighty. So I've got my list here, and we have a podcast coming up this Friday. So with Jared Henderson, don't forget to hop on and listen to that. You can go onto our website, www.the Right Club. Oh, there it is behind me. Rightclub.com. go to the podcast. You can listen there or on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you are. Next Wednesday, April the 29th, is our big live in-person event that's virtual, our monthly event. And this is, we will have a coast-to-coast market update, a professional expert panel, just like we did last month. We're having an update on that. And we're also going to be talking about Airbnb and vacation rentals, because that's a really big issue. A lot of things are changing.
Especially with the ban. I'm really angry that they're banning us and they're fining us $100,000. So lots of interesting information will come on April 29th.
Yeah. So go on and register, go to our website, see what's going on, click through, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.